Limahl, welcome to 69 Faces of Rock. How are you doing today?
Hello, Mark. My first question to you is, even though you're the one doing the interview,
Yeah,
why is it called 69 Faces of Rock? Is that a sexual pun?
it could be, but actually, I'm gonna have to give something away. It was the year in which I was born.
Oh, boring.
But and then again, maybe it is that
Maybe it is, yeah.
connotation.
Maybe we should
Look,
make it that.
as a musician, you should know that you always leave things out for interpretation.
Uh-huh. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, it's lovely to meet you, and I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Excellent. So first of all, congratulations on your new single. Absolutely fabulous. The idea of reimagine an absolute classic like Horse with No Name is stunning. How long were you working on that?
Quite a while. I started in the last on and off the last 3, 4 years. I got so tired of it. It's a bit like the artist doing a painting or something, and then you can't see it anymore. You can't hear it anymore, in my case. And then I would put it away for a while and do something else and go off and do a live show, or there was a family thing, and then I'd come back to it. I kind of, it's quite nice. There was no pressure, no deadline. So that gave me the artistic and creative freedom, which you don't always have when you're signed with a conglomerate and a big contract.
Correct.
But the icing on the cake was I did a TV show in the UK with it's a popular TV presenter here. She started on cruise ships, and now she's a big star in the mainstream. She's not a big music star. This is a big television star. Her name is Jane McDonald, and she had a TV series, and she's a good singer. Um, and so she invited me to perform on her show, The Never Ending Story, and her show was broadcast on terrestrial TV, so national TV, Channel 5, on a Sunday evening. So it was quite a big audience. And while I was there, I had to rehearse with a band, and I met her guitarist, Steve Cooper. Now, Steve's got a credit list. He's worked with Lionel Richie and all kinds of great people. He's a really good guitarist, and he's got the hair to match. Um, the long hair, it's just the perfect rock guitar look. So anyway, after the show, I sent him the files. He lives in Birmingham. I'm in just North London. And I said, look, Steve, I want to try guitar on this track. I don't think I want guitar because the original's got guitar, and I don't want to look like I'm trying to emulate the original because otherwise there's no point doing the cover version. So I sent him the files, and I was kind of not expecting too much. I was, even in my mind, possibly slightly negative. And then when I received them, because I just gave him a free license. I said, look, just play whatever you feel. Just give me lots of ideas. I said, if I don't use it, I'll still pay you, which is music to a musician's ear.
Yeah.
So
Um,
anyway, this guitar came back, and I started playing around with it, and with a fresh ear, it just became a no-brainer, really, that it has to be in, and it worked beautifully with the synthesizers and the electronics that I had created.
mhm. Where do you think you were able to take this piece of music with your interpretation?
Oh gosh, I don't think you know the answer to that as an artist. I mean, you pick up new interested audiences with every track, and you might lose other audience members along the way who are not interested in that track.
Mhm.
I don't think you can really think about the end audience. You just have to hope and pray, really. I um I was nervous about doing it because it's such a classic, and it's kind of almost in the same regarded in the same league as things like, Hotel California or, other great rock songs. Um, and so I was very nervous, and I guess that's why I kept starting it and stopping it. Get it right, get it right. Um, and I have to say, I'm absolutely thrilled with the reaction, and I find it even interesting that you guys are vaguely interested in talking to me because you even have rock in your title, and I do not have a rock voice, but I've lent my voice to this sort of. It's not really a rock track, is it? I'd call it a folk rock pop genre. Would you do the same?
Uh, yeah, it's a great connection between classic rock and the music world from which you came.
Right. No, I'm talking about the original. How
The
would you
original, it's
describe that?
kind of like a folk rock kind of song.
Folk rock. Yeah.
Folk rock, very kind of hippie-ish in a way.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's timeless, no matter what it is.
Yeah. And number one in America, 1972, was it?
Put it this way, not a day goes by without hearing that song on the radio.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
A guy said on social media when he heard it, he said, Limahl singing A Horse with No Name by America was not on my bingo card this year. But I'm loving it. What a surprise! And just if you go on YouTube, it's had 45,000 views the video, which was a lot of fun to do with those lyrics. And 99.9% feedback is so positive. So it's been really, really nice for me to finally put it out there and kind of, see this reaction.
hmm Um, is this an indication of something bigger to come, like a possibly a new album or one-off?
No, I released two tracks in 2020 in the pandemic year when, like everybody else, I had nothing to do. So to stop me from going insane, I just threw myself into creativity. I don't have a record deal, so I'm like a self-releasing artist, and there are many now, of course, because technology allows us to do that. There are a lot of what I call DIY projects out there, and I try not to be, I feel I feel a responsibility because of my history, if you like, to at least put out a certain level of quality visually and audibly. So the reactions to A Horse with No Name, I have like 7 tracks ready. So I'm thinking, well, actually, why don't I just do like an album and see what happens? There are lots of comments on social media, just like your question, asking the same. And yeah, maybe in 2026, at some point, I
Yeah.
think it take me time to get it ready. I have 2 more tracks to complete. I think an album should have at least 10 songs.
I
So
agree with that.
yeah.
Um, do you anticipate any live performances or possibly touring in relation to the success of this track?
Wow. I think it's hard to tour on the back of one track. I tend to get offered um, live work in in situations where there's like a retro package, you
hmm
know. So I did Totally 80s tour in Australia in 2016, something similar in Japan. In 2018, I was in America with that was called the Retro Futura tour with ABC and Belinda Carlisle and the girl from Bow Wow Wow.
hmm
Um, and events like that. I'm going to Reykjavik in Iceland for the first time this year in September. I'm headlining at Pride in Cologne in Germany in July. There's a lot of inquiries actually at the moment for 2026 for some reason. But will I don't think I could tour on the back of a single, but I think if the album did okay, that's maybe something that will come together.
Yeah. As you mentioned a few seconds ago, you have an incredible history. and I can't wait to ask you questions about your past. How did you come up with Limahl as the entertainment persona?
Okay, so everybody knows there's and everybody knows certain famous names and their stage names. So let's say some examples. Let's go right back. I mean, it started in Hollywood, really, didn't it? So you've got Judy Garland, who was originally, her real name is Ethel Gum. I like that one. Um, you've got Tina Turner, who is Anna Mae Bullock. That's her. And it's just tons of them. I always thought Sting was cool because it was one word,
Mhm.
a bit like Madonna, I suppose, which is more my era. But I was a big fan of ABBA, and I read in an interview how they got their name using the first letter of their first names. So you've got Anna, Benny, Bjorn, and the dark girl in ABBA is Anna Frida. So
Yeah.
it is an A, even though everybody knows her as Frida. So I started playing around with the letters of my surname, my family name, which is Hamill. And so I swapped the letters around. Limahl. I thought, oh, that's quite interesting. Sounds a bit like a cocktail or something. That's quite nice. Yeah, I turned up at the rehearsal I was living with the bass player of Kajagoogoo and his girlfriend Sue, and we were writing songs and rehearsing. I turned up one day and I said, "Hey guys, I'm not Chris anymore. I'm Limahl." So there was some sniggering, but you know, um, thankfully it worked out.
Rest is history. Not only that, you came up with one of the most iconic looks in the 1980s. It was instantly recognizable, revolutionary. How did it come about?
Well, 3 years before I met Kajagoogoo, I was in a stage show called Godspell. Godspell is one of those sort of biblical musicals in the mid 70s, written by Stephen Schwartz, a New Yorker who also wrote the current hit Wicked, the stage show and now a film, of course. So I'm in Godspell, and in Godspell there's a cast of 12 and there's a Jesus figure. So there were 6 guys and 6 girls, and I was very excited about this show because I had toured in Joseph and the Amazing Dreamcoat, and I only had 2 lines to sing solo. Everything else was in the choir, and it was very demanding, and it was great training for my voice. In Godspell, I had my own song. I was so excited. I was going to have my own little spot. And the girls, there were 6 guys and 6 girls, and all the girls looked really different. There was a redhead, a dark, a blonde, wavy hair, straight hair, etc. All the guys had exactly the same hair, sort of short, dark brown, and that was it. I went to the director, whose name was Chris Dunham. I remember his name still. And I said, "Look, Chris, all the guys look the same. The girls look really different." And I said, "I quite fancy having a bit of fun with my hair." And he said, "Oh, fine, go and do it." So I went off to a hairdresser's in a place called Westcliff-on-Sea, which is near Southend on the southeast coast of the UK. And I went into this local salon and I came out blonde, and I loved it immediately. And there are some pictures of me online in Godspell with the blonde hair before the black bits were added. They were added later, sort of an organic process of experimentation that you do when you're a teen, when you're young. So
Yeah.
that's how it came about. It was just very organic. There were no super stylists brought in to model the band, as it were.
Yeah.
So, and I had no idea what an impact it was going to have. I really didn't. I was just a kid experimenting with my hair.
Yeah. And I'm going to show you something that I dug out. I got this in 1984 at the airport in Zurich. And this came with a magazine called Bravo, a German magazine.
Oh yes, here we go.
Right there, like a little cutout, like you can see, like
Yeah, that's amazing.
I know,
Wow.
right? The fact that I still have it and it lasted that many years.
Yeah, a super fan will pay you well for that.
You
You
kidding?
know, absolutely. I see stuff of mine because I have a Google alert on my name, and everyday stuff comes in because it's a world wide web. There's some crazy stuff out there. But yeah, I do see a lot of stuff that's selling on eBay or similar sites, posters, photos. Yeah, incredible. But for that to survive 40 years is amazing because that's like it's like is
Yeah,
it flat?
no, it is
Yeah,
not.
it comes
Actually,
out.
when you turn it, it comes out, and there are two statues. There are you standing and you sitting. I mean, look at it sideways, and there it is
Yeah,
up front, and it has.
that's amazing. Wow. Well, I don't even have one of those myself, so that's fantastic. I do have lots of stuff,
Uh-huh.
um, but I don't have that one. I've never seen that one. That's interesting.
Yeah, and it
I
was.
mean, it was a wonderful time, Mark, because we were young and we had tons of energy and we finally made our dream come true. I was working 7 years to try to make it
Mhm.
through the theatre shows and recording demos and writing bad songs before I wrote good songs and joining bands and leaving bands till I finally met Art Nouveau, the
Yep.
band that became Kajagoogoo. And um, and then of course, and I'm sure it's a question you're going to get to, Too Shy led to Never Ending Story, which was another worldwide number one. And
Absolutely.
these two songs have been so good to me for 43 years. I'm a very lucky guy.
Well, yeah, you got two songs that are instantly hits, recognizable, and they're timeless. You kind of became an immortal in a way. Um, Also, around that time, you guys met Nick Rhodes from Duran Duran. How instrumental was he in getting Kajagoogoo to what they became?
Yeah, he was completely instrumental. And there are other precedents of this in, in the music business that we've all heard of. You've got Gladys Knight, who introduces the Jackson Five to Motown. You've got Peter Gabriel, who introduces Kate Bush to EMI Records. And with us, I was working as a waiter in a very cool nightclub at the time in a very cool address. So this is Old Bond Street, beautiful historic street, shopping street in central London. But in 1980, it had a nightclub. The paparazzi were always outside trying to snap the celebrities coming and going. Probably hoping to get them, photograph them while they're coming out drunk or something and falling over or swearing or whatever. But I used to see lots of people in there. I mean, Gary Newman was in there, the Bananarama Girls, Steve Strange from Visage. I saw Boy George in there. Um, Elton John's manager, John Reed, Lemmy from Motorhead.
Oh, Lemmy,
No,
the character.
no, Lemmy was a character, and I mention him because um, he used to love the slot machine,
Oh
and he
yes.
would always lose because that's why they're put there by the venues to make some extra money. And he'd get drunk, and then he would start attacking the machine and slamming it against the wall. The security would be called, and he would say, he's swearing, effing and blinding. Um, and during some of my interviews to promote A Horse with No Name, I've discovered that apparently he had slot machines at home in his house.
He did.
Yeah, so he was completely addicted. But anyway, I digress. So um, one night I served a drink to Nick Rhodes, who was in there with his manager Paul Barrow. The Durans had two managers actually, so it was the Barrow brothers, Paul and Mike. And they were the owners of the nightclub where Duran were kind of discovered, which was the Rum Runner in Birmingham. So I'm talking to Nick and I'm being very enthusiastic about my band. And I'm in a band and we love Duran. He said, to my surprise, he just said, well, send me your demos and I'll let you know what I think. Gave me an address. I sent him a cassette. A week later, I was living in West London in an area called Lancaster Gate, which is quite near Hyde Park. It's a nice area. It was 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon. We had a green plastic phone on the wall. It was a rented apartment. And I'll never forget because it had one of those twirly cables that always got tangled up. I pick up the phone and it just says, hello, Limahl, I've received your cassette. I really like the songs and I'm going to take them into EMI Records. And completely took me by surprise. I was shocked. I think the demos were good, you know. I think he wouldn't have been interested if the demos were bad.
Absolutely.
But what is interesting is 2 interesting points, Mark. EMI Records had previously turned us down about 6 weeks before. So this is real proof that it's not what you know sometimes. It definitely helps with who you know.
Absolutely. Could not agree more. It's all about being at the right time, at the right place, with the right person.
Yeah, right place, right time. And the other thing I should mention is that Too Shy was not on that demo tape. Can you believe that?
Now that it took me by surprise. I figured that was the key in a way.
No, it was not on. Too Shy came later as we developed the album. But as Too Shy evolved, you know, the recording that is the hit is the 3rd recording.
Oh, so there were 3 takes.
And no, there were 3 different recordings at different dates.
Okay.
So there was a demo at home, and there was a demo in a demo studio, and then the actual recording. And funnily enough, in my research for A Horse With No Name, I discovered that that's exactly what happened with their song. It evolved, it developed. Sometimes things just develop. It's very rare that something just falls into place, especially today when you've got 120 years of popular songs, whether they're in films or musicals or rock or jazz or whatever it is. Every lyric, really, every melody has been done. You know, it's impossible to think that you could come up with something new.
It's getting tougher and tougher. So before you knew it, White Feathers was out. Too Shy became a huge hit, and you guys were mega popular. How did you handle that type of popularity and exposure?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I'm a big fan of Motown Records, you know, the R&B label that came out of Detroit. And in reading about Motown, they had this thing called a finishing school, which really intrigued me. So I think, you know, the label became so successful. If you think of the 4 Tops, Stevie Wonder, Jackson 5, Diana Ross and the Supremes, the Marvelettes, the Temptations, they would all the songs would be written and produced, and then they would they'd go to this, there'd be choreography done and there'd be costumes done, and then they'd go to the finishing school. I think the woman's name was Maxine. And I remember reading that thinking, wow, what a great idea. We didn't get any of that. We were just thrown to the wolves, you know, thrown in the deep end. So to answer your question, Mark, how did we handle it? Well, first of all, it was very exciting. You know, we were a bunch of 23, 24-year-old guys, been working hard for this for 7 years. We were not an overnight sensation. It just happened that our first single exploded across the world. And so I am from very humble beginnings. I was raised in government housing in a small town in the north of England. And suddenly I'm ringing my parents saying, I'm in Stockholm, I'm in Paris, I'm in Berlin. You know, we had to go and do the music shows, perform on the music shows across the world because Too Shy was going up all these charts. And of course, EMI Records as a conglomerate, as an international company, were part and parcel of making that happen. But there's a saying in the music business about there's only so much a record company can do. And the expression is this, and it's quite funny. It's slightly crude, but they say you can't polish a turd.
Heard that one before.
You've heard that one before. So,
Yeah,
EMI did a certain amount, but I think when we went across Europe doing Top of the Pops, or in America it was Bandstand or whatever, or Soul Train. Um, Television had such a big impact back then, pre-internet, pre-mobile phones, pre all this technology. If in the UK, when you appeared on Top of the Pops, you got an audience of guaranteed audience of 15 to 20 million, and culturally, that was so important. And so we had to go and do the equivalent in every country. And suddenly it was very exciting. We had tons of energy. We've been working for this for so long. So a long answer to your short question is we lapped it up. It was like kids unwrapping presents on Christmas Day. It was great. And I've only got fond memories. Yes, the schedules were intense and it was like a tidal wave, but we just got on our surfboards and we rode the wave. It was brilliant.
absolutely. Why not? And how do you reflect on White Feathers 42 years later?
Very interesting question. I almost never listened to it. Um, Somebody came up to me. I was out in central London a couple of nights ago at a performance, and someone came up to me in the bar and said, I was listening to White Feathers yesterday. Thank you so much for that album, blah, blah, blah. And it means so much to me. And I was going through some shit at the time, blah, blah, blah. And that really touches me, I think I reflect that if look, I've got certain songs in my life that take me to a place, a person, a memory, and they're important to me. And if the music that I've created has the same effect on other people, then that just makes me feel very proud and feel like I've achieved something. So although I don't listen to White Feathers very often, when I do, sometimes it comes up for whatever reason. I just think, wow, it kind of encapsulates that early 80s sound, because remember, the album was actually recorded in 82, even though it was only released in 83. And it was the early time of all this new modern technology then. The synthesizer was the new kid on the block. And we were all so excited, like our contemporaries, Human League, Soft Cell, Eurythmics, Depeche Mode, Duran, Spandau Ballet, etc., Visage, Culture Club. I mean, it was such a great period. And I think I just feel really proud to have been part of it.
Absolutely. The funny thing about that album is when I listen to it now, I notice things that I kind of took for granted. It's the great playing on that album. You had a hell of a band behind you.
And I miss them.
Yeah.
I've missed them since. It's so cruel that they phoned me out of the blue and fired me because they didn't like being, we had lots of screaming girls, and they wanted musical credibility. Well, guys, the Beatles had lots of screaming girls, Duran had lots of screaming girls, Wham had lots of screaming girls. Unfortunately, the manager was weak, and it was like a friend of the band, and they just threw everything away at the height of our success. And when I joined that band, I remember I auditioned for them. They called me. I had an advert in a music newspaper, a weekly music mag called Melody Maker, and they called me up and said, "Look, we know you're looking for musicians to form a band." He said, "But we are already a band, and we've been looking for a singer." And Nick said, it was Nick, and he said, "Do you want to come up to Leighton Buzzard? This is a town about 50 miles north of London." And I was living in London at the time. And I said, "Sure." I jumped on a train and Nick met me at the station and we went to a greeting card factory where the drummer worked, driving a van in his day job. But the boss of the factory said that we could use the factory floor to rehearse. We could make lots of noise and it was cheaper than hiring a rehearsal studio, etc. And I stood there and I watched them and I listened to two or three songs and I immediately thought, these guys are good.
Yeah.
And you're right. The playing was good. Stuart on keyboard was classically trained. And a lot of people talk about the bass on Too Shy, which of course is phenomenal. But it was Stuart who played that chord first. Stuart played the opening chords to Too Shy. That inspired Nick, and then that inspired the guitarist, which in turn was inspiring me on lyrics and melody. It's a real collaboration, and that's why there are five songwriters credited to it. It's a wonderful process when everybody's like working for the same goal. I mean, sometimes you do have to compromise, but hopefully you get there in the end. But the guys were great musicians. They're really silly throwing it all away.
Yeah. Well, magic was definitely there, but it didn't stop there for you. Tell me about your first solo album, Don't Suppose, and what was it like to transition from a band situation to a solo performer?
Well, getting fired by Kajagoogoo was a bit like if you're suddenly dropped by your lover and you are hurt. And so what you want to do more than anything is your ex-lover to see you walking down the street with your new lover. So you can go, nah, 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 nah. And so my point is I had a really good incentive to try to prove myself. I can show you guys. I mean, really, I think there was a part of me that was saying, fuck you, Yeah, I was angry. So it was a good incentive. And it's a whole new journey. You're working with session musicians, with a different producer, in a different studio, with different equipment, different influences, in a dedicated band, with the same heads at the table, if you like. Everybody's bringing that unique recipe. It's a unique recipe of creative influences. And suddenly I'm in a situation with different creative influences. But I loved it. I really loved it. And that's why I'm still doing it. I'm addicted, I suppose, to having ideas in my head musically. Because I'm the kid. Well, let me finish that sentence. To having music in my head, an idea in my head, and turning it into something really interesting that's playing back to me a day or 2, 3, 4, 5 days later and going, wow, now that is exciting. And I'll tell you why I love that process, because when I was 12 years old, around 12, my mother's friend, Irene, a lady called Irene, and we called her, me and my two brothers and my sister, we called her Auntie Irene. And it was the kind of upbringing where people left their back doors open and people were in and out. Can I borrow some sugar? I've run out of milk. Can you give me some milk? It was just super friendly and very low crime. And one day, Irene, she knew I liked music and she was throwing out, well, she said she was throwing out, maybe she wasn't. I never thought of that. An old portable record player. It needed power, but it was portable and it only played singles. And she was throwing out 6 singles as well. So suddenly, away from my 2 brothers and my sister, I had something that I owned. Bearing in mind we were very poor, I'll never forget taking the arm, putting it on this vinyl, and I couldn't work out how this was, well, how was this amazing sound going through that plastic arm and coming out the speaker? It was just incredibly fascinating to me. And of course, through that process, I just became addicted with the whole idea of recording. And that I think that's still in me, really.
Yeah, yeah. So the album produced few hits like Only for Love, Too Much Trouble, or the very memorable Never-Ending Story. How did you feel you were doing at that time?
Well, I was repeating exactly what happened with Too Shy, but on my own. So I'm going across the world. I think when we promoted Neverending Story in America, I spent 6 weeks on the road. The record company had me flying sometimes 2 cities a day doing radio station interviews. Um, it would literally be airport, radio station, a record shop perhaps, or a journalist, back to the airport, to the next city, do it again, check in a hotel, sleep overnight, go somewhere else. For 6 weeks. Such hard work. Um, with Europe, it's quicker because it's, you can fly back and forth from the UK quite quickly. Everything's an hour, 2 hours away, but there's still a lot of hotels. Um, Sorry, Mark, what was the question? How did I feel I was doing?
Yeah, with
Yeah,
so many hits at your disposal.
I, well, I'm watching Neverending Story as a solo artist just go to number one everywhere. 17 countries, I think. Sales rocketing. And it just surprised me. It did because I've been asked this question. Did you know Too Shy was a hit when you recorded it? The answer is no. Did you know Never a New Story was a hit when you recorded it? No. You just don't know. You listen and you think, it's quite nice. And I'll tell you, I mean, there's lots of stories, music-based stories about artists who didn't really know what they had. I mean, Gloria Gaynor's I Will Survive was a B-side. No one saw that coming. Um, oh God, there's so many. I need to write them down so I can just recall them. What's the other one I was think? What was the other one I was thinking of is, oh, never mind. Anyway, but yeah. Oh yes, it was Gwen Dickey from Rolls Royce. They had a big hit in I think it was the late 70s with a song called Car Wash from the film.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Uh, yeah, and I toured with her in theatre in the UK around 2002, 2003. And we did 9 month tour together. So we spent a lot of time, in coaches and hotels and rehearsals.
Mhm.
And we talked, of course. We shared stories. It was great fun.
Um,
One day I said to her, because I love that song. I remember it exploded onto the UK scene. I said, did you know that song was going to be a hit? And she said, huh. And she's American. She said, I said to the producer, who the hell's going to want to hear a song about washing cars? She didn't want to do it. She didn't want to do it. So, and these stories are endless.
yeah,
So
that's that.
I, I was really glad. And every time Never Ending Story plays, a little part of me is going, nah, 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 to Kajagoogoo.
Now, in fact, you got to work with the legendary Giorgio Moroder on Never-Ending Story. What was Giorgio to work with?
What a privilege. What a privilege. Yeah, I was fully aware of his work. Getting a call from Giorgio Moroder would be like an actor getting a call from Steven Spielberg.
Mhm.
It's he's a legend. He's up there with your Phil Spectors and your David Fosters and your Trevor Horns, etc. And the weird thing was I was I was offered the opportunity to try my voice on Neverending Story. It wasn't a definite gig. So my manager called me, who'd met him in Tokyo, and said, do you want to go and try your voice on this potential soundtrack? So I went off to Munich and I put my voice on it. So I didn't know for 2 days when I came back, I didn't know if it was going to be used or not. And yeah, I wasn't sure if it was a hit. I thought, yeah, it's quite nice.
Yeah. In fact, a trivia question would be, have you ever found out who else was given that try?
Very good point, Mark. Yeah, well, I don't think Giorgio would probably to be gracious, to be polite, he probably wouldn't say. Maybe he might tell me secretly and not tell me, to ask me not to make it public. I don't know. But at the time, I've seen an interview where he said he absolutely loved Too Shy.
Mm.
And he'd heard it in America, and in the interview was singing it a bit. He was going, "I like this song, Shy, Shy." Um,
So he had plans.
what?
He had plans for you.
Yes, maybe. I mean, I'm just so grateful. Have we got time for me to tell you what happened the night before?
Of course we do.
So the night before, I was meant to go to Munich to try my voice on Never Ending Story. I was out nightclubbing because I was 24 and I was drinking and smoking. I got to bed at 4 a.m. My flight was at 9 a.m. I nearly missed the flight. And when I arrived in Munich, my voice was not working at all because I'd been out being a naughty boy, raving. But of course, so we tried the vocal in the afternoon and my voice was too tired because it's quite high for me. Never Ending Stories right at the top of my range and consistently high. Turn around, see, even higher than that. So anyway, I I wasn't I didn't panic. I just said to Giorgio, I said, "Oh, it's too early to sing." I said, let's have some food and chill out a bit. I said, "This evening it'll be fine." Because I always associated singing with evening because all the theatre work was evening.
Right.
Shows are in the evening. A jazz club is evening. So, but of course, after dinner, um, when you're young, the hangover recovers quicker, and it was all good. But if I'd known how important Never Ending Story was going to be in my life, I would have gone to bed at 7 p.m.
I think everything happened for a reason. I think it was perfect the way it was, and maybe you would have been over prepared by going to bed early.
Maybe.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, maybe. I'll never know. I'll
um,
never know.
so the song appears in a kids' movie and immortalizes you forever. Generations of kids will continue to see that movie and associate that song. Um, just recently, the song was revived again in a very popular show in America called Stranger Things.
Yeah.
Any opinions?
Well, first of all, I didn't know about it. The first I knew about it, my two nephews, my sister's boys, who are in their 20s, sending me a message on WhatsApp. OMG, OMG, they're using your song in Stranger Things. And I was like, what Stranger Things? Um, I've read an interview online with the producers of the show who got down to two songs they were choosing between A and B. And I can't remember what the other song was, but I do remember this. They said they were undecided, and then they discovered that the other song was going to be used for some project with Amazon Prime, their competition. So they went with Neverending Story. And in life, you need luck. So it was very lucky that they chose my song. But what is interesting, Mark, is the rights to the book became available a few months ago or a year ago, and the family have sold the rights to a big production company. And the plan, I understand, is for a live action TV series for one of the big streaming sites to be made. Will they use mine or will they record a new version with a new artist? Let's watch the space on that one. The other thing to mention, Mark, with Neverending Story is there's a fantastic stage adaptation musical running in Spain. So I went to the opening night in Madrid a couple of years ago, and I sang with the cast at the end of the show. It's a big red carpet event. And that's now running in Barcelona. I watched it in Spanish, and I don't really speak Spanish, but the production values were so good. You know, they've spent a lot of money. They've really got it right. I'm hoping that they'll translate it to English, and then you could see it on Broadway or even the West End, and then Neverending Story will be living up to its name and really becoming Neverending.
Oh, it is already never ending.
Mm.
So in 2003, VH1 show Bands Reunited brings back Kajagoogoo, original lineup. What was happening behind the scenes? How did that happen?
You see, reality shows seem to offer the opportunity for great exposure. And VH1 was very big then, you know, the competition of MTV. So, yeah, it's amazing that everybody agreed to do it, including myself, because I just thought in my head, let's see what happens, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I took my emotional baggage, put it in a closet with a huge padlock, and nothing was discussed. Nothing was discussed. And we just went with the flow. I had all these questions, but it wasn't the right time to talk about it. After the broadcast of the show, VH1 were talking about a tour with some of the other bands from the series who had reunited like us. So I sat down with the guys, and there was a royalty issue. Now, this was the second time they'd approached me about a reunion. And what happened was, when I left the band, I was advised by my lawyer to take a reduction in royalties. It didn't make sense, but this is how it was put to me. So instead of getting 20%, I would have to reduce to 6%. And I thought, why should I reduce my royalties? I've just been kicked out of the effing band. But he said, as a solo artist, you will benefit from the band members staying together and promoting the back catalogue, including Too Shy. This was a top music lawyer. Of course, it became a decision that I regretted. And so the first time they approached me, I said, well, guys, you know, we can reunite, but I need my 20% back. They said no. After VH1, I made the same stipulation. They said no. So excuse me, Mark. So that reunion didn't happen. And finally, as you know, in 2008, yeah, I got a call from their new manager, and I'll never forget, I was in Windsor, where the famous castle is. And he said, hello, my name's Bradley. I'm the new manager of Kajagoogoo. We want to talk to you about a reunion. And I said, Bradley, just stop right there. I said, it won't happen because they won't give me my royalties back, my share. And he said, they will. I've already talked to them. And that's what happened. In 2008, I got my 20% back, and I've had it back ever since. And that makes me very happy.
And what memories do you have of that 2008 run?
Again, nothing was discussed. You know, I still have unanswered questions. I tried to meet the drummer, Jez, 2 years ago, and he just didn't have the answers, because I still don't know who came up with the idea to fire me and why, and how long did they know. They knew, you know, these are questions I still have, but I just decided to put them aside for the reunion and just be creative, and also grateful that I was getting my royalty share back. The creative process was fun and interesting again. We did an EP and we made a video, and I think it could have worked out. The problem is this manager, Bradley, he he bailed out. And when you don't have you know, a Brian Epstein figure or a famous managers, Simon Napier Bell, who managed Wham, or oh gosh, there's so many, but you need a really good figurehead to crack the whip, the captain of the ship. You know, there's a famous, I don't know if you know it, Mark, there's a famous, in music circles, there's a famous tape of a 60s band called the Trogs.
Oh, yeah.
Who had this #1 hit called Wild Thing. It's a great record. Then they fired their producer, and they were in the recording studio trying to do the follow-up, and the engineer just hit record, and they were arguing and swearing. Don't fucking do the drums like this, you cunt. It's infamous. It's hilarious. It's out there on YouTube if any musicians are interesting. You know, the point is, when you've got 5 people trying to make a decision, it's you know, and then throw in some, look, marriages don't work out, and there's only 2 people in that. You know, try 5. So it's a shame it didn't work out. It may have worked out if the manager had stayed on board. So we did 3 years, and it kind of fizzled out.
Mm-hmm.
And but it was a very interesting time, and it's an interesting chapter in my life that I may talk about in depth if I ever get round to writing a memoir or something.
I think the fans expected finally a follow-up to White Feathers at that point. And I think many were kind of disappointed that it never materialized.
Yeah. Yeah. What can I say? You know, the manager bailed out and things fell apart.
Yeah.
And it's always going to be, excuse me, everybody's life has a what if in it, you know, and that's one of mine. What if Kajagoogoo had stayed together? Because I only recorded 1 album with them and then I got fired. What if we'd done more albums? It's like you might say, what if I hadn't gone to that bar that night? I wouldn't have met my wife. What if I hadn't taken that job? I would have met that other person who gave me a job at that other company. It's like the movie Sliding Doors, you know, could I go through this door, go through that door, this happens, that happens. Yeah, it's crazy. I'll never know. It's a big what if in my life.
Did you at least part as friends this time around?
Big pause.
I know.
Big pause. Because I want to answer honestly. No, not really, because when the manager left, we started arguing.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, it was a working relationship initially that could have turned into a good friendship. I just watched an interview with Mick Jagger, and you know, he talks about his relationship with his brother and his relationship with Keith Richards. And people ask him, is the relationship with Keith Richards, is he like your brother? And Mick says in this interview on his own, he says to the guy, no, they're completely different relationships. I would say that my relationship with Keith is work and friendship, completely different relationship to what I have with my brother. So, friendship could have grown from the working relationship, but the working relationship didn't last long enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are your personal highlights from all those areas we had just covered?
Well, gosh, there's so many.
I know, right?
There's so many. The first Top of the Pops in the UK, that was a big highlight because it was such an important, iconic show. To get that phone call when Show was released, and we were in the recording studio finishing the album, and we got the phone call on the Tuesday to say, your song has gone in the UK chart at number 33, and you're doing Top of the Pops on Thursday. And we were all running around, jumping around like, Christmas morning, queuing for the one landline telephone to call our friends and family with the exciting news, because Top of the Pops was just huge. Other highlights, a short conversation, a nice conversation with Freddie Mercury at a VIP area in his private party after the Wembley concerts in the mid-80s. Because EMI, they were on EMI Records and we were on EMI Records. And so the colloquial term we use is the artists are stable mates. So we were stable mates. And of course, the record companies say, we've got tickets for the party and tickets for the show. Do you want to go? So that was very, very nice. I went to Elton John's 40th birthday party. That was a real highlight. I met Ringo Starr there, Phil Collins, George Michael was there, Nick Kershaw. What's really fun, I took my mother to that party. All my friends were calling me saying, please, please, can I be your +1? Because the invitation was Limahl +1. And I was going, no, sorry, I'm taking my mom. Because I love my mom so much and she was so proud of me. And so I rang her. I said, Mum, do you want to come to Elton John's 40th birthday party? She was like, yes. So it was great. And I went up to all these stars. I've got the pictures here. I'm going to show you, actually.
Oh,
This is my mother. Okay, so that's my mum with Britt Ekland. Can you see that?
yeah, I do.
Hang on.
Yeah.
Can you see that? I don't know. Is it working, the effect?
It's kind of flashing, but enough. There's enough
It's
image for us.
flashing. Why
Yeah,
is it flashing? I don't know. Okay.
yeah.
So that's Britt Ekland. This is my mum with Ringo Starr.
Oh, that's absolutely awesome.
And let's have a look. What else we got here? My mum with George Michael.
Fantastic. Oh, she had a time of her life.
Phil Collins.
Look at
Can you
Phil.
see that?
He's happy. Your mom's happy. It's all good.
So, so my mother at the time, she worked in a supermarket. So then she went home. The local newspaper did a double page spread saying, what was this Wigan housewife doing at this superstar's birthday party? So it was a picture of my mum, picture of Elton. And what is a connection with Limahl? So, of course, all the other women and men at the supermarket would say, my mum's name is Cynthia. They'd say, Cynthia, don't let me hear you complaining anymore. Hanging out with all the stars.
Yeah.
It was great fun. Other highlights, I met Princess Diana. She was so iconic. I met her, I was standing at a charity show, standing next to Boy George. I was backstage in Germany, standing next to Tina Turner. I met Sting. I mean, it's just, I was in a room with Roy Orbison, after a show in New York with Julian Lennon. I mean, the list, I really should write that book.
You should. I mean, you clearly have that book inside you. Um, what would you say are the most surprising aspects of your career?
Oh gosh, surprising. How much hard work it is.
I know, right?
Yeah, I mean it's not all tits and teeth, as we say in theatre. Before you go out on stage, before the curtain goes up, the performers always say to each other, tits and teeth, meaning energy, get out there, perform. And it isn't all like that. There's long flights, long journeys in vehicles. Um, your sleep pattern can get messed up. Um, you've got to perform when you feel like shit. You there's an enormous pressure when your name is on the bill, your name is on the contract, and you've got to deliver. There's always that pressure, and you want to do your best. And sometimes your voice is not working as uh, the way you want it to. You really have to take care of yourself. Again, I'm going to refer to the Mick Jagger interview. You know, I was so surprised hearing how much he's involved in. He had a he had a degree in business economics at the London School of Economics. He had a business degree, and he used all of that in the success of the band. I had no idea. He also plays keyboards. I had no idea. He's constantly at the gym, and he's swimming, and he's looking after himself because you have to. So that's really one of the surprises. It's not as easy as it looks.
Yeah.
And I know this with actors because about 5 years ago, I trained on and off for 3 years in acting. And they make it look so easy, but it's not. It is very hard work. You've got to learn all those lines and then get up at 4 in the morning or 3 in the morning and go into makeup for 2 hours and then be on set and you're hanging around and you might be tired and suddenly they go, right, we're ready. They've set, they can spend 3 hours setting up a scene. So yes, it's show business and it's fun, but it is hard work,
It is.
definitely.
On top of it, the world of pop music is very tricky. I mean, one day you're on top, one day you're on the bottom. So what do you do when the hits are gone and the phone is no longer ringing? How do you maintain?
Another interesting question, Mark. Well, the way I dealt with it in the late 80s was I said to myself, okay, if I'm never going to have another hit record, does that mean I'm going to be unhappy for the rest of my life? Well, I can't be unhappy the rest of my life. That would be a waste. That would be a total waste. So I just snapped out of it. I just thought there's so much to enjoy in life, and I've got my health and I've had the success. So I threw myself into a role as a producer, a bit like an actor who goes on to direct or a footballer that becomes a football manager. I saw myself, and for 7 years, from around 1992, I was I was managing a small recording studio in Shepherd's Bush in West London with a fellow producer, Guy Fithian, and we called ourselves Jupiter because we're both Sagittarians and that's our rising sign. And we got so close as producers, behind the scenes. We didn't quite break through. We were so close so many times. The point is, though, that those 7 years were not wasted because I brought all of those skills that I learned to A Horse with No Name, my current single. A Horse with No Name, that production is not something that just happened by chance. It takes a lot of skill and experience to sort of put the jigsaw puzzle pieces and create this. It's art, really, creating this picture of audio. And I am ever so proud of it.
Everything happens for a reason, once again. Do you have any regrets?
Oh gosh.
Long list?
Um, yeah, I wish I had these questions beforehand because off the top of my head to think of the answers. One regret that I've got, and you won't really relate to this, only UK listeners would relate. I once appeared on a TV show in the UK with this fantastic actor, British actor, who was very well known here, a comedy actor, a brilliant mind. His name is Kenneth Williams. You probably don't know him. He was the star of a series of movies called Carry On. They were cheap comedy films, but they were great. Carry On Sailing, Carry On Camping, Carry On um, Policeman. You know, it was all these different carry-ons, and they were hugely popular. And he was on chat shows, and he was so I did a TV show, and he was on the same show, and I meet him in the studio, and we shook hands. And one regret that I've got is that I didn't say to him after the show, "Would you like to go to dinner?" Because he would have been such an interesting man to meet,
Hmm.
and I'm sure he would have said yes because I was 23 and he would have been probably in his 40s, maybe 50s. I can't remember what age he died. Big loss. So that's one regret. Um, Obviously there's a regret of Kajagoogoo not recording more than one album, but we've talked about that.
Yeah.
I regret hurting so much. I in my 20s I was in love. I got really hurt twice. But you know, they are great inspirations. I mean, it's everybody's journey, isn't it? You've got to get hurt, and that's life's journeys. But when I look back, I just think, oh, you know, hindsight's a wonderful thing. If only, you know, you can't, what's the expression? You can't put a wise head on young shoulders. I mean, the pain I went through, I was dating a guy, and we were like 3 months in, and I really liked him a lot. And one night I came home and he said, "I'm sorry, I'm leaving you. I'm going back to my ex." And I was like, so shocked and so hurt. And then I saw them together. Oh, it was awful. Yeah. So that's a regret that I allowed myself to feel so much pain because I think that if someone doesn't love you, you can't make them love you. You just have to move on and get over it, you know. That's what I would say to anybody. Plenty more fish in the sea.
Yeah. Um, Limahl fans are definitely a dedicated bunch. Any touching stories from your interactions with fans?
Well, crazy stories. There was a newspaper. The famous UK newspaper was called News of the World. And this was a Sunday tabloid. It was very big, huge circulation at the time. And it was run by Rupert Murdoch, you know, the mogul, the Australian mogul, who now owns Sky News and other businesses. But News of the World also had a supplement magazine, and I was on the front cover, and it said, "Would you send this man your toenail?" And the reason was I'd opened a fan letter, and this girl said, "I love you so much. I've grown my toenail and I've cut it off for you." I didn't keep it. I was kind of grossed out actually.
Uh, interesting one.
Can I just rewind a bit, Mark, and just say, because I wanna finish the love thing on a happy note. I've
Yeah,
actually been in a really nice relationship for 32 years with my partner Steve. And
congratulations.
I say to my mum, who's still alive, by the way, she's brilliant, she's 87. She's just waiting for her hip to be done, bless her. But I say to my mum, you know, Mum, if I've come through all of this and I'm sane and I'm healthy, part of the reason is Steve. Because just to have someone really solid in your life, a soulmate, you know, someone to share things with, go on holiday with, someone who loves you, who's got your back. You know, it's been great. It's still great. So
Fantastic.
I did find Mr. Right in the end. I know most majority are looking for Mrs. Right, but you know, there are those of us.
Well, happiness has many faces.
Exactly.
Um, let's get back to A Horse with No Name for a second, since that's
Hmm.
what we began with. What really stands out is the quality of your voice. How do you maintain that tool 40 years down the line?
Well, when I was 40, I'm now 66, I gave up smoking. You know, I think around that age, the hangovers start taking longer to recover from. I definitely, you know, I definitely was a party boy for many years. But around 40, I thought I better start being good to my body and I've got to start loving it back. So I gave up smoking. I've always kind of looked after myself, a bit of gym, a bit of swimming. And then later, around the age of 50, 55, I started having some digestion issues and I had to really take care of my diet. So nutrition, it's all, I mean, it does become more important as you get older. I think I've been lucky. I think probably one of the real benefits for my voice is the theatre training. You know, I wish it would be very cool to just say, I open my mouth and I sing. But I trained, I had singing teachers. Then in theatre, when you're doing 8 shows a week, lots of vocals, you learn this little mechanism, what upsets it, what makes it work. You learn if you're tired, it won't work. You know, you see, you have no choice. You've got a responsibility. You've got to look after that voice. And I've always kind of done a certain level of maintenance for mind, body, and soul.
It still sounds great. Finally, what else do you hope to achieve career-wise?
Well, when you get to my age, you don't hope for too much, you know. Um, I always think, well, don't be greedy. You know, you've had a very interesting journey when you consider my humble beginnings. But maybe the album, you know, that might be fun to do the album. I I'm kind of more chilled now. I'm kind of semi-retired, but I don't see any point in completely giving up because it's quite nice to have things to do, you know. Otherwise, what would I do? And I still enjoy it. So I shall continue recording and performing as long as I want to, and as long as, you know, mind, body, and soul are working. Hoping for longevity, certainly with health. I would say that I'm a bit death phobic, you know, and I think that's because I've had such a fun life. I'm having such a fun life. And the idea of death is just so bleak, you know. And all my life I've been asking, what's it all about? I remember that I had that question in my head when I was 19. Why are we here? What's it all about? Who created, you know? And as we discover more and more about the universe, I just become more and more baffled. And I'm a little bit, what's the word here? Going to be careful. I'm a bit cynical about religion. You know, it seems to me religion causes a lot of wars and killings. Uh, and I don't understand that because we're all supposed to believe in the same God and we're all humans and yeah, you know, it just feels like the end of the video for Horse with No Name. It feels like the expression is the lunatics have taken over the asylum.
They sure did. Each time you turn
That's
the
how.
news.
Yeah, did you know that song? That was a great song by a UK band called Funboy 3.
Oh yeah, I remember them. I remember them.
around 1980. The other song they had a hit with was Our Lips Are Sealed, which was covered by the Go-Go's, wasn't it? Big
Hmm.
hit for the Go-Go's, American girl group around the 80s or something. But
Yeah.
that's the same band wrote that, Fun Boy 3. And Terry, lead singer was Terry. I can't think of his second name. But I'm going on a cruise in July, a cruise ship with my partner and some friends. And I still go to the theatre. I was at the theatre the other night. I still love the theatre because, when I go and see a show, I'm up there on stage with the other performers. I know exactly what they're going through. I still love gigs. I go to gigs. I love culture. We've got so many great museums and my partner and I, we love cycling, and we've had some great weather so far this year. I've been cycling a lot. So, life's good. Life's good. I don't want to end on a negative note. Uh, I'm just trying to be honest in the interview, but longevity would be great.
That's a good way to end it, longevity. Well, Limahl, thank you so much for taking the time, telling me all these great stories, a lot of great trivia, and good luck with everything you do. And hopefully that book you mentioned will take shape.
Yes, maybe that's something I should do, and that will keep me busy. So, oh well, Mark, thank you. I think it's great that uh, a website slash podcast slash interviewer with rock in the title. So the 69 Faces of Rock. Because I don't think I've got a rock voice at all. You know, I've got my voice and I can make it work for certain recordings. I'd describe my voice as pop. So I think it's great that you wanted to talk to me. And I hope you and the listeners have found it interesting. Thanks for having me.
I had a blast.
Brilliant.